So it's Marvel Monday, and that means it's time for the next episode in my series Journey to Marvel's Infinity War. And that means today we are talking about Doctor Strange. We've also made it to April. That means we are in the final stretch here. We are less than a month away from Infinity War, so this is an exciting time. People have been asking me ever since they moved Infinity War up a week, when am I going to double up? How am I going to cover all the movies given that I have one less week? Next week is the week I'm going to double up. I'm going to do both Spider-Man Homecoming and Thor Ragnarok next week, just so you know how that's going to work. Now, before I get started, go ahead and tell me down below in the comment section, what was your take on the movie Doctor Strange? Had you read the comic books before? What was kind of your full background on all your stuff with Doctor Strange? Like, for me, Doctor Strange was basically a brand new character to me. I knew he existed, but I hadn't read the comics at all for him going into it. So it's very fresh going into this movie. And one final thing before we get started, this video is brought to you by my supporters over on Patreon. Big, gigantic thank you to you guys. You guys are part of the reason that it's possible for me to put so much time into this. You can see their names down below on here. I want to give a special shout out to one named Adam over at Almost Sideways. He just hit 1 year on YouTube. I'll put a link right up here to his channel. If you haven't subscribed to him, go over and check out his channel. He's a good friend of mine and one of my supporters over on Patreon. And go over to his channel and say happy 1 year anniversary on YouTube. With that said, let's get started talking about the good. For me, the best thing about this movie were the visuals and the world of magic that they created inside of the MCU. But what this movie did is it found a way to take the world of magic and give it a whole new look. Taking maybe some visual cues from Inception and Dark City and The Matrix and some movies like that, but taking it to a whole new level and showing us things on a scale that we've never seen before. When you got like these kaleidoscope cities and stuff that's, I mean, obviously you're watching a special effect, it's CGI heavy, but you're seeing something artistic, something very creative in what they crafted in the look of everything. Even just the way that they do the magic stuff and the sparks, it looks cool. It's very enjoyable just to see it. It's a feast for the eyes, an appropriate use of that while being CGI. With so many movies where I can be critical of CGI, here I say, no, this is a good way of showing me something I have not seen before in this sort of way. So many different ways that they visualized this magic in interesting and cool ways. And that's the thing that makes this movie just pop. I'm just kind of wowed at, like, they found something new to show me, which that is one of the things that movies are all about. The second thing that I just love about this movie is, once again, and as usual, Marvel has just kind of knocked it out of the park with the casting. So you got Benedict Cumberbatch in the lead as Doctor Strange, and he can just pull off the arrogant, brilliant guy so well. That's condescending, sarcastic, but at the same time, curious. And can, like, when he's put in his place, like, you just see it on his face. He's like, teach me, you gotta teach me. And just, you can see the desire for him to learn, and he can pull off intelligent. He can pull off the guy that's in the physicality of all of it. Brilliant casting. And I guess I was a big fan of the show House from a few years back. So he's kind of like Dr. House if he turned into a sorcerer, which is a very fun idea to put out there. And even, I mean, he pulls off the condescending, the sarcasm like Dr. House had. So I have a lot of fun with the Doctor Strange character. And as I said before, I'm coming in as a person that had not read the comics. I hadn't seen a movie. He did maybe little cameos in some of the cartoons and stuff I watched back in the 90s, but very unfamiliar. And so just this portrayal right here made me love the character. From there, when you got Chiwetel Ejiofor, when you have Tilda Swinton, these type of actors, they just fill things out very nicely. And there's, you know, all sorts of controversy over casting Tilda Swinton in that particular role. Fair enough. I understand if that's a holdup for you. I totally understand where you're coming from, and I don't understand fully the decision in casting her. But being that she was cast in the movie, she played the role very well and had an odd vibe to her, and you could tell there's history to it and the complexity of the morality and the decision-making that she made, all that fun stuff. She portrays all that on the screen. Oh, you got Mads Mikkelsen in here as our main antagonist throughout the film that we're seeing. You know, he just brings a certain level of likability to him, and even had some kind of like jokes and humor there at times that you know, worked and landed. And so taking what could be a fairly flat character, as we'll see later on, and giving a little little bit more characterization just through the performance that he brought to the screen. Also expanding on some of the things I said before, this movie expands the MCU once again by bringing in the world of magic and sorcery. And that's one of the things that the MCU has just done such a great job of, movie to movie to movie, is finding ways to build off this world that started with Iron Man that was, you know, it was kind of grounded but sci-fi because we're building robot suits. And then we're able to build and add Thor into it. We're able to add aliens into it. We're able to add this whole cosmic realm. And then we're adding sorcery now into it. And they're just taking one step at a time. And each time giving us enough information to build and expand so we can believe what we're seeing. And also so it feels cohesive. That each movie can have its own vibe to it. This movie feels very different from Iron Man. And it also feels very similar to Iron Man. And so it feels like one franchise that has many franchises inside of it. And so they've just always done a great job of this world building and continuing to expand it. And once again, they did that here. And it's so interesting as you find the details about all this history and the secret worlds inside of it. And so much of that comes down to they also found a way to visualize it so cool, as I've talked about extensively. One more big thing on this one that I thought they just did a great job with was inside of our sorcery team here, they built internal conflict within it by having the Ancient One making choices that are very questionable and pulling off this dark magic and the same source where Dormammu is getting his powers from. And so you got Chiwetel Ejiofor who's not okay with that. And throughout the whole movie, as they're compromising on their standards and their values, that's a legitimate reason that he has issues with them that leads to conflicts at the end of it and where things are headed. And you can see where this is building up for a sequel. And I love it when they can build things into it so well that set up a sequel while not sacrificing this movie. It doesn't feel like, as we're watching it, oh, okay, we're just putting extra scenes in here just for the sake of having a sequel and setting up future movies. No, it made sense in the context of this movie to have different worldviews, different perspectives, and have little reveals about the characters as we're going along that perfectly fit this movie while probably setting up Doctor Strange 2, whatever that one's going to be called. And I love elements like that. From there, let's move on to the mixed aspects on this one. The first thing that comes to mind is the humor. Maybe of all of the Marvel movies, this is the one where I felt the most forced humor. This one, it felt like they were really, like they needed to put jokes in it because there was so much exposition, so much world building, so much time with him training before we get into full sorcerer mode in the third act of the movie that they felt they had to throw in jokes as entertainment. And some of it felt both out of place, it didn't land, it fell flat, and it kind of pulled you out of the movie. Doctor Strange is going to the library and there's all the headphones and the music and joking about Beyonce and stuff like that. It felt like they were trying to like do kind of a Tony Stark kind of thing, except it just didn't work. It just didn't land right. So it was kind of like, hey, Beyonce. That doesn't feel like that fits here. It feels like you're trying too hard to make me laugh. So the humor, while being funny at times, sometimes it absolutely works. The sarcasm, going back to what I said before, the show House, the Dr. House type humor and sarcasm, condescension, that stuff was great. Some of the stuff with the cape works really great. And then other times in there, it felt off. Another one that was mixed for me was Rachel McAdams. Now, the Chandler household loves Rachel McAdams. We're a huge fan of her. And, you know, back when my wife and I were dating and we were long distance, we'd watch The Notebook over phone and we'd talk to each other. And so Rachel McAdams, huge fan of her. The fact that she's in the MCU is tons of fun for us because we once again love Rachel McAdams. As we were watching this, my wife went, oh, I forgot she was in this. Which if my wife forgot that Rachel McAdams is in this movie, that tells you kind of how forgettable or how little her role is inside the MCU. So it's very odd that they would cast someone like Rachel McAdams that kind of pops out. That you go, oh, Rachel McAdams is in this. Okay, she's in the first 15 minutes, and then she's in 7 minutes in the second half of the movie, and that's it. It's just enough that it's not really a cameo or a bit part, but it's not so much that, you know, it's one of these main characters in it. So it's just a really odd place to have that caliber of an actor play a role like that. From there, let's move on to the negative. And it goes back to really two things that kind of intertwined with each other in several ways. And first one is the story structure and in general, just the story structure and flow of the storytelling is a little bit clunky and odd and the Marvel template or Marvel origin story template. And then it's also has the Marvel villain problem in many different ways. And it creates its own Marvel villain problem in another sense. So we'll start off talking about the story is structured very odd. So basically, it's a movie where they have to do so much exposition. They have to tell us so much backstory, and it keeps, throughout the first half of the movie, it just kind of sprinkles in our villains, and hey, Dormammu's out there, and there's evil magic, and there's these other Caecilius is doing stuff, and so it sprinkles it in there a little bit, and we have these little scenes here and there, but it's really the first 60% of the movie is the origin story of Doctor Strange. So we're spending lots of time with him, getting to know him, watching him train and grow and do that type of stuff. And then at about 60% of the way through the movie, it just goes into this extended third act where from there, and the first 60% doesn't have a lot of urgency. There's not like a villain that's right out there that we're trying to stop. We know the villain's out there because we're talking about him a little bit, but really the journey we're on for the first 60% is we need to get Doctor Strange to have powers. So 60% of the movie is all about getting him up to the point where he can battle people. As soon as he has those powers, we go straight into the third act that goes on for 40% of the movie in different sequences and stuff, but extended third act. And so that's a very clunky way to do things, but it's very much also the way that Ant-Man is structured. You see Ant-Man in normal life gets out of prison and meets some new people, discovered and starts training for a bunch of the movie, and then the last 30% goes on the heist and he goes into our battle at the train, and it's the last 30-40% of the movie is pretty straightforward urgency, whereas the first 60% training, we have to get him up to be Ant-Man. Same with Iron Man. And so it's a template that they kind of keep reusing over and over again with these movies, and at a certain point in time you start to notice it a little bit more, and you notice it a lot with this one because so much of the movie is so exposition heavy, and then it's just like instantly we swap over into quick moving, urgent, bad guy out there, we got to stop him, Dormammu's out there, it's clunky storytelling at a certain point in time. And this one, I think the structurally is the clunkiest of the three that I just mentioned there. Also, the second piece in that is the Marvel villain problem. So once again, we have a movie where 60% of the movie we're building up our character, and we're just kind of mentioning out here a little bit that we have a villain. And then suddenly our villain becomes the main focus. And so there's not a lot here that's building up either Caecilius or Dormammu. We just are told just enough, and then we watch them battle a lot. And then the other problem with our villain issue here, really the main villain of the movie is Dormammu, but they're only telling us that. And so we get one scene at the end with Dormammu. So I did my ranking of the villains, a month ago or so, and a bunch of people, and they were like, why didn't you put Dormammu? Why didn't you put Dormammu? Why didn't you put Dormammu? Well, because he's only in one scene in the movie. And so I don't even know how I would rank him given the way that I kind of do that type of ranking video. But at the same time, he's kind of the main villain of the movie. And so I understand where people are coming from. I know I didn't add him in, and I know why people want me to add him in or think that he should be added in. But that's also an issue in the way that the villain was kind of handled with a standalone movie like this. Anyway, there's kind of my take on this one. The goods, the mixed, the bads. Overall, this is a very unique experience, a very cool experience, but not a movie I find myself like I wanting to go back and rewatch a lot. When I watch it, when I see those visuals, I'm like, wow, that was cool. Man, Benedict Cumberbatch is so good in this. Oh, it's so cool to see Rachel McAdams in a Marvel movie. And at the same time, structurally with the plot, it's not a movie that kind of gets me as excited as some of the other movies. In this one, I'm going to give this one a B+, very solid movie, and on the entertainment level, I'm going to go 8.5. That's what I scored it when I did my original review for it, 8.5, and now my new system, I have both the letter and the numbers. From there, let's move on to our MCU connections on this one. I wasn't able to do full kind of research notes on all this one, so I don't have as much to say. There's a couple references in here to the Avengers where they say, the Avengers protect the world from physical threats. The sorcerers defend the world from metaphysical threats. So that's a nice little way to talk about kind of what's going on here. We get another Infinity Stone in here in the Eye of Agamotto. And so we got a Doctor Strange running around with his very own Infinity Stone. That's another one on my heroes ranking. A bunch of people are like, how do you have Doctor Strange so low? He's got an Infinity Stone around his neck. Yeah, but I'm not ranking them based off of their power because I don't know how you can compare power. I'm just not wired to talk about things like that. Anyway, we got a mid-credit sequence that's in Thor Ragnarok, which is so cool. I love the way they kind of have been done with a couple of those mid-credit scenes recently where they're actually from one of the upcoming movies. I get a kick out of that kind of thing. And then we also have a post-credit scene where Chiwetel Ejiofor shows up, starts taking out that guy, probably setting up our next movie in the batch. But so I didn't do as much research on this one. So if you guys want to tell me the MCU connections I missed on that one, I would love to hear your take on all of that fun stuff because I'm running a little bit behind. I'm trying to still get this one out on Monday for you guys. With that said, I'm going to move along to you guys' take on the movie using the Stardust app.
I enjoyed Doctor Strange. I thought it was a good movie. I like the way the magic was presented and shown to us in that film.
Doctor Strange, it's alright. I really enjoyed the film. I don't flat out love it.
This movie surprised me a lot when I first saw it. I was not expecting to like it as much as I did. I love the action scenes in this movie, the way they fight with the magic, where reality is bending, you know.
I really like the casting. I think Benedict Cumberbatch and Tilda Swinton just do great in their roles. I think the visuals are the best of the MCU.
One of the Marvel movies that I really liked when I saw it, but since then I've had no desire to rewatch it again.
It has the most clever and original final battle I've seen in the MCU film.
I like the fact that the time stone was in the movie and the way that they used that stone. I like that.
I think the third act is an absolutely incredible third act for Marvel, probably one of their best.
This movie has lots of elements from Inception, and it's a beginning story. I compare this one to Batman Begins. They have a similar structure.
This was an interesting MCU movie because every time I think about wizards, I think about Harry Potter.
I love the effects. The effects that Scott Derrickson did in this film was amazing.
This film and had amazing visuals. It's different to all. It is very different to all Marvel films.
I really like Benedict Cumberbatch in the role as Doctor Strange, but the movie itself, it was rushed. They rushed certain things.
And the only problem with this movie is the villain. It's very bland, very forgettable. Nothing too special about him.
The villain was kind of weak, but then again, there were two villains in that film.
However, I think the villain is really, really generic.
Caecilius' character isn't a very motivating villain, which kind of makes you wonder, could they have made this villain more compelling?
The villain, Caecilius, completely forgettable.
The villain was probably the worst part of the movie. He was just really weak in general, and they probably should have just used Dormammu as the main villain.
But this movie does feel very generic in terms of a superhero origin story. Still really good, though.
So there you have it. That's what you guys had to say about the movie Doctor Strange. If you want to appear in one of my future videos, it's very simple. All you have to do is download the Stardust app at the link down below. Once you download the Stardust app, follow me first. You can see my username on that bar right in there. Follow me first. That helps me out. They kind of give me credit when people do stuff like that. And then whenever you record your reactions, obviously I'm going to be doing all the future Marvel movies. Whenever you record your reactions, there's a little mark thing up in the upper right-hand corner. Tag that, click that button and then type in my name, Sean Chandler. It'll appear on there, and then it shows it up in my little feed deal so I can see that you guys wanted me to make your video appear in one of my future videos. So that's all it takes. It's totally free, doesn't cost any money, super easy to use, just all of it right there in your phone. And then I can see your wonderful face, hear your brilliant ideas, and share them with my wonderful audience as well. So there you have it. That's what we have for this week. Remember, next week, actually, I think at the beginning of this week, I said next week was going to be the week with 2 videos. That's not true. It's 2 weeks out that's going to be the one with 2 videos. Next week is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. My most controversial things I've ever said on my channel was my thoughts and opinions on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So next week's going to be interesting. I'm going to put extra time in that one. I might even watch it 2 times, take lots and lots of notes, because this is like going to be my magnum opus of discussing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which I've been doing in the comment section for 11 months now, and people have been so brutal, so I got to build very strong defense. So hopefully you guys will come back to check that one out. And if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos. The key thing is I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you. So join me down in the comment section. Let's have a lively discussion. And as always, thank you for watching.